Hello, my name's Elizabeth Hopkinson. I'm a writer from Bradford, and I'm the author of Asexual Fairy Tales and its forthcoming sequel, Asexual Myths and Tales. I wanted to gather together some of the tales that meant a lot to me, along with some original tales that I'd written myself and had previously been published in other magazines and anthologies, when I put together this book of Asexual Fairy Tales, which has had a wonderful reception, not just among readers, ordinary readers, but I've even had interest from therapists, from fairy tale scholars. It's been really wonderful, and that's encouraged me to put together a second book, Asexual Myths and Tales, which has included some of the stories that were left over from the first book that I didn't put in. But I've also spent the last year actively looking among world myths and fairy tales for stories that have an asexual flavour or similar themes to the stories in this book, because I wanted to try and get a wider scope that represents more of the world's cultures, and I hope I've done that a little bit in the second book, and maybe it represents a little bit more of the asexual spectrum than just me, but mostly it's from my perspective in both books. Both of the books have been illustrated like this by my daughter Anna Hopkinson, who's an illustration student at the University of Huddersfield, and so we'll put some of those pictures up for you to enjoy while the stories are going on. This is Attis and the Priests of Cabelli from my new book, Asexual Myths and Tales, which has just been funded by crowdfunding and is about to go into production. And Attis and the Priests of Cabelli is a myth that I have discovered during the last year. It does involve castration, so that's just a little warning, and I was not sure. I struggled a little bit with whether to put it in, but it does reflect the desire among some asexual people to be genuinely, as I said, sexless as Barbie and Ken, and the eunuchs are among my personal asexual icons. And also this tale, it's kind of got it all going on. It's got a lot of androgyny, it's got a bit of everything, I think. So I think it gives you a little snapshot of some of the things coming up in the second collection. This is Attis and the Priests of Cabelli, a myth from ancient Phrygia, which is now in Turkey, that was adopted by the Greeks and the Romans. Were you to walk the city streets of the ancient Mediterranean, you would find many temples and many gods. Hardly a day would pass without incense burning, and the clash of cymbals to proclaim a festival sacred to some deity somewhere. Among the many worshippers you may well encounter the priests of Cabelli, the Galli as the Romans knew them. They were a very special people, counted as neither male nor female, and endowed with the gift of prophecy. Each one was a eunuch, castrated by his own hand for love of the goddess. On sacred days they would dance through the streets to the sound of the pipe and tambourine, their jewellery jingling and their long hair flowing in the wind. It was said that once a gallus took shelter in a cave in which there was a lion. Courageously the priest played his wild music, and the lion fled away. But how did such eunuch priests come to be? The answer lies in the tale of a shepherd and the daughter of a river god. History repeats itself, like a serpent devouring its own tail, until one can no longer tell which came first, the serpent or the egg. The tale goes that in ancient Phrygia, the daemon of Mount Aegisthus was once androgynous, with both male and female parts. But the gods cut off the male parts and threw them away. From that spot there grew an almond tree, and from that tree Nana, the river god's daughter, one day picked an almond. She placed it in her bosom and from that moment became pregnant. She was the mother of Attis the beautiful. From his earliest days he had the face of a god and the long curling locks of a maiden. He was brought up by shepherds and by the fawns of the forest, for a river daughter is but a fickle mother. And he was tending his flocks when Cybele saw him and fell in love. Attis was wandering beneath the pines when the goddess Cybele came by in her chariot driven by lions. Their love came quickly, as it often does among the gods, but it was not a love to be consummated in the common way. How could it be between two such partners? Some say that Cybele was in fact the Daemon Aegisthus, now shorn of male parts and solely female. And since Attis was born from those discarded loins, were they not already two halves of a whole? Be that as it may, Attis' only desire was to tend the shrine of Cybele and worship her as a priest. This was to Cybele's liking. "If you would do so, then desire to be a boy always," she said. "I do so desire," said Attis. "I make this vow before you, to love only you, and never to lie with another." This would have been well, but Attis' foster parents had other plans. Sensing his innate nobility, they sent him to Pessinus, secretly arranging with King Calaus that Attis might wed the king's daughter. When Attis arrived at Calaus' court, the wedding table was already laid and the priests assembled. Calaus smiled at the beautiful youth and spread wide his hands. "Welcome, son-in-law, to your bridal feast." Attis felt no desire towards Calaus' daughter, shapely though she was. He wished only to be the chaste consort of Cybele. But as a dutiful son, how could he refuse the plans his parents had made for him? Reluctantly he went along with the ceremony, but as the wedding song was being sung, he suddenly had a vision of Cybele riding her lion-drawn chariot, her eyes flashing with jealous anger. "No, I will not break my vow," he cried, and rushed into the forest. It was there that Calaus found him, weeping under the sacred pines. "Dear boy, put away these tears." Calaus caressed Attis' wet cheek. "Don't be so hasty to despair. There are other paths to union our families can take." Calaus leaned closer. "Beautiful boy." Attis saw the other man's eyes brighten. Bearded lips grazed his own. He leapt back in shock. "Get away from me! I desire to lie with no one. No one. Don't you understand?" Calaus took hold of him more roughly this time. "I think you protest too much, my boy. If you have no desire for a woman, then surely your tastes are for men. Why deny it?" Before Attis knew it, his shepherd's knife was in his hand. "Get back! I am no one but Cybele's, and I will prove it." And with these words, he cut off his own manly parts and collapsed beneath the tree. From deeper in the woods, a clash of cymbals and a rumble of chariot wheels drew nearer. Calaus fled for his palace in fear. The goddess Cybele dismounted and knelt by Attis' side. "Attis, beloved shepherd, I beg of you, do not die. You have proved your love for me again and again. How can I lose you now?" She raised her eyes to heaven. "Father Zeus, can this man not be spared?" But the heavens were silent. In desperation, Cybele caused Attis' departing spirit to go into the pine tree, which henceforth would be sacred to his memory forever. And in memory of the love of Attis, all future priests of mine shall be eunuchs, willingly and by their own hand, Cybele declared. So shall they prove their devotion to me, although none can be as dear as he. And that is the reason the priests of Cybele were eunuchs, and why every year they would cut pines to mourn the death of Attis, gentle consort of the goddess.